Welcome to our series on faith and life. You know, a little while ago, I had the opportunity to go to the United States for a conference. And when I was there, I stayed with a couple of families. Now, I had met them before, so we knew one another, but you wouldn't say we were really close friends. And they invited me to stay with their families and spend time with them. And I've got to say, what an absolutely beautiful experience it was to be invited into their homes, to share meals with them, to chat with their teenage children, and really to understand what was happening for them in their families. And as I reflected on it, I thought, hospitality is an amazing gift. And it's a gift which really has a way of proclaiming Christ in the world. It's something that's diminishing, I think, in our current world, in our modern world, because we tend to be more suspicious. People that we don't know so well or we don't know at all, we tend to think that they might be dangerous, untrustworthy. And we're not always ready to let other people into our lives. You know, sometimes we can feel like our lives are a little bit messy and that we don't want anyone else encroaching on that area. We don't want our children telling strangers our family secrets, any of those things. We live in a more enclosed world rather than an open world. And so it was a beautiful experience for me to spend time with these families and receive their hospitality. Now, hospitality is one of those gifts that's been very present in the life of Christianity from the very beginning. But one of the people who took that to a whole new level was a man by the name of St. Benedict. And hospitality in the rule of St. Benedict is something really to reflect on, because it gives us insights that we don't normally get. So let me just take a moment to share with you one of the quotes about the rule of St. Benedict. In one of the commentaries, it says this: respect, care, absence of judgment, encouragement, welcome, friendliness, ministering to the needs of others in the Spirit of Christ are all part of Benedictine hospitality. They're amazing words: respect, care, absence of judgment, encouragement, welcome, friendliness, ministering to the needs of others in the Spirit of Christ. At the core of St. Benedict's vision of hospitality was the core of love. It was a commitment to love. And the reason why he was able to shape it in the way that he did was that he saw the stranger, the visitor, as Christ. And so his welcome, his encouragement, all those other words that we just heard are words that they would use about a visitor and treating the visitor as Christ. Now that changes things. It changes the way that we look at things. Unbelievably. And my wife and I, before we got married, we had a vision of making our home a place of hospitality. And of course, the images and the vision of St. Benedict were an incredible inspiration along the way. But as we began, we thought, well, how can we make our home a place of hospitality? And there were a number of simple things that we could do. You know, we didn't have to become a Benedictine monastery in order to do that. Early on in our married life, before we had children, we would invite different people over, sometimes single people whose families were not in the same city, to make a place where people feel welcomed, that they always knew that they could come and have a meal, that they could spend time. Eventually, we had some single people live with us as part of our community lifestyle. And usually they were students or people whose families were not living in the same city. And so we opened our home and made a place for them. You know, with our children, they always knew that they were welcome to bring their friends to our place. And particularly as teenagers, this blossomed into more than a few people coming through our home. But it was life-giving. You know, that capacity to share life with others, in fact, brings you life. And before anyone would come and live with them, we'd invite them to have a meal with us, to spend a little bit of time with us. And as our children got older, we would ask them, what did they think? Would they be happy for this person to come and share life with us? And usually their answer was yes. Once or twice it was no. And we respected that decision, that sense of their participation in this sense of hospitality, because it empowered them to play a role that they too would share as they became adults and establish their own homes and families. And so for us, it was a great experience to actually just be a place of welcome. And sometimes in our life we had more room in our home than others. At different times we'd add another room or we'd do something, but we learned how to stretch meals that people might turn up at the last minute, so there was always room for somebody else at our table. And I think this is one of the secrets of hospitality. It's not about offering silver service to people. It's not about providing the very best for them, especially if you don't feel like you have the very best. And I can remember speaking to one older lady once, and she said, I don't know how you do it. How do you have people in your home, and how do you serve them meals? And I'd have to bring out the best china and cook these elaborate meals. And it's like, actually, no, we don't do any of those things. This is life for us. This is simple. They have what we're having on the night that we're having it. So if it's sausages and mashed potato, that's what they have. We don't feel like we have to create some elaborate lifestyle, but we welcome people to share the life that we live, to have what we have. And so when we have really nice things to eat, that's what they get. And when when the budget's low, that's what they get as well. And you know, as our children's friends would come over and share meals and do things like that, there was never a complaint. There was never a complaint that, you know, you didn't put out the best china, or not that there was a best china. No one said, this isn't good enough for me. Why? Because people appreciate receiving, and they receive what you offer to them. I can remember in World Youth Day, this was a significant thing when we had World Youth Day in Australia, trying to place tens of thousands of young people in the city of Sydney and in dioceses all around Australia where they gathered beforehand. And I know I spoke to a number of people who said, oh, I could never have all those young people in my house. You know, I don't have a bedroom to offer each one of them, and I couldn't possibly do that. Now, let me tell you, as somebody who's been to more than a few World Youth Days and slept on a cement floor, a mattress on the floor of someone's home would be a huge step up on some of the places where I've slept. And as you say this to people, it's almost shocking that, oh, you mean that would be okay? And it's like, yes, that would be okay. This is hospitality. This is making a place for people. This is receiving them as you would receive Christ. Why? Because they have dignity. These are pilgrims. These are God's people. And what's true of the individual home is also true of the faith community. You know, one of the things that the faith community is challenged to do is to be hospitable. That hospitality is a way, a means of proclaiming the gospel. I don't know whether we think about that a great deal, but I do know when you're on the receiving end of beautiful hospitality, of being welcomed, of being part of, that it touches you in some way. It actually has a profound effect and evokes a sense of gratitude. Now, one of the challenges that we face is taking time for people, actually giving others attention. You know, one of the things that I often encounter in people is that they have no one who will listen to them, that they don't have anyone who will listen to their story. They don't have anyone who'll take the time. And so for us, as we think about this and we think about faith and life and how is it connected, that something as simple as hospitality can be a strong manifestation of faith, of proclaiming the gospel, of proclaiming Christ by welcoming the stranger, as St. Benedict says, as Christ. We have to make decisions about that. It's not as if that's necessarily ordinary. As I said, my wife and I, we went on a bit of a journey with this to discover what that might mean. And for us, it's meant a number of different things over time, whether it's welcoming people into our house, having a meal, taking time with people, having others over. But this sense of hospitality, of welcome, of respect and care for the other, of encouragement. These are things that we don't just naturally do. We actually have to make a choice. We have to make a decision about it. What do we want to do? What's the culture that we want to create in our homes, in our families, in our communities? Do we want to create a culture of hospitality? You know, we live in a country where there are many visitors, where this is a very multicultural nation. I was reading one sociologist and he said, after Israel, that Australia is one of the most multicultural nations on the earth. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but it's certainly true that we are made up of people from many, many nations and cultures, of religions. And so we have an option before us as a society, whether we are going to embrace one another, whether we're going to give that care and that respect, or whether we're going to accentuate the difference and be a divided nation. This is one of the current challenges that we face. And sometimes you think about something like that and it's too big for me. You think the question is too big. I can't answer that myself. But you can answer it in your own circumstances. You can answer it in your own home. You can answer it with your own family. Now, one of the other perhaps unique areas of hospitality that we don't often think about is a sense of hospitality to ourselves, to the care of ourselves. Not in some selfish sense, but in a sense of respect for our own being. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's those final two words that I'd like to focus on for a moment. Of course, it's important to love your neighbor, but what does it mean as yourself? You know, in the same way that you would be hospitable to a stranger, a visitor, what about that sense of hospitality for yourself? Now, we live in a world that runs like crazy. Day after day after day. There's meetings here, there's meetings there, there's flights, there's train rides, there's movement all around. There's movement with your work, there's movement with your children, there's movement here to social life, there's movement here to sport. We can spend our whole lives running. And we weren't created for that. And so, where do we take time for ourselves? Where do we actually focus on some sort of balance in life? It's easy to get swept up in this strong current of you've got to be busy, of wearing the tag busy like it's some sign of success. I remember I went into a shop the other day and the guy said to me, "Are you busy? Like, are you being successful?" And I refuse to use the word busy about my life. It's just a little pet hobby horse of mine. But I said to him, you know, my life is really full. There's so many good things going on. And he said, oh, you're lucky. And I just smiled at him and I thought, no, I'm not going to declare myself as busy as if to say I'm successful at being busy. It's not a badge I prefer to wear. Now, that might be just my idiosyncrasy and that's okay. But too often now, as you go places, and oftentimes when you go into a store or something, people say, are you busy? And I usually give a very different answer to yes or no, because I don't want to hold up busy as a means of success in my life. And, you know, Jesus offered us life to the full. And I like to think that's what I'm living, life to the full. Is it full? It is full. And it's great. And I love living the life that God has given me. And in that life, I've found as a leader amongst people, that if you keep saying you're busy, they actually will interpret that as you're too busy for me. And I never want to place myself in that position. In fact, when people say to me, are you busy? I'll say, I'm not too busy that I don't have time for you. And I think for me, that's a really important characteristic of a leader, that we take time, that we actually make time for people. And St. Benedict captured this more than 800 years ago, and it's one of the the reasons that his rule and the order of St. Benedict has continued, because it's such good common sense, and it's such a respectful way of living and treating people. And I really just have a great joy about trying to emulate that sense of life, of vitality, of hospitality, and welcoming people into that. It's actually, it surprises people. It's not what they expect. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy making a meal for somebody who's not necessarily expecting it. And, you know, we have this culture of trying to support those around us, and my wife will often make meals for young mums and people who are struggling with one thing and another. And it's about trying to build this sense of hospitality into daily life. And we actually can do it. And what is it? You know, hospitality is at the heart of the gospel. It's at the heart of the good news that Jesus came to bring, that people are worthy. People are worthy of respect. People are worthy of time. People are worthy of being welcomed. And I hope this week that you will find somebody to welcome into your life, into your family, into your circumstances, and to give them the respect that you would give Jesus in welcoming him into your life, into your family, to your dinner table. So I look forward to greeting you next week as we continue our journey in faith and life.
Shalom World brings to you the Catholic faith in all its different dimensions. It can be a faith to inspire you in your own living of your Catholic life in society. Shalom World offers you an opportunity of being enriched and strengthened in your family life. We live in a culture that needs to have a Catholic presence. We live in a culture that needs to be evangelized by the presence of Catholic teaching and the inspiration to live according to our Catholic way of life. I recommend to you to be involved in the work of Shalom World. May the Lord bless you and bless the work of Shalom World. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Shalom World, God's own channel.